Good morning, all you beautiful Torbay business women. My name's Catherine, and my practice is called Confident Strides Counselling and Supervision Wellbeing Service, and I'm based within Torbay. And I've been asked to come on and talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. And that's very apt because of course so many people have to confront this sense of imposter, whether on low level or high level. They reckon about 70% of society actually struggle with this, and it is something that can be dealt with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you. I've got my notes today just to prompt me, because I'm trying to squash so much information into a small amount of time where people don't lose interest and can really go away with something. And of course, please comment underneath with any other questions, and I'm sure there'll be some things that I miss, and apologies if that is the case, but I'll do my very best. So if I look down, it's just because I'm just checking my notes to make sure I haven't missed something. So first of all, as I said, 70% of society actually struggle with this. The difficulty is society is set up very much a culture of scarcity, in not having enough, not doing enough, not getting enough qualifications, not having enough money, and also a comparison society. So you look everywhere, there's comparison that happens everywhere. Or look at next door's car, or comparing yourself, your weight, your size, your race, your religion. There's a lot of comparison that happens, and unfortunately that all feeds into having this imposter syndrome. So what does imposter syndrome feel like? And obviously that varies according to the degree that you have it. For some people it may be a slight lack of confidence, feeling a bit anxious. For others it is absolutely paralysing and prevents them from doing quite a lot in their lives when they really want to achieve something. The reason it's so paralysing is because what's the underlying emotion to it is fear. And fear causes lots of responses in us. So what are some of the behaviours you might see in people? Because sometimes people don't always pick up their emotions. They may register their behaviour, or somebody else might tell them about their behaviour first. So generally it's avoidance, avoiding taking up opportunities, avoiding circumstances or people, distrust in themselves, and as far as absolute panic or panic attacks, of course, it really does paralyse some people. And it also creates a lot of shame. People sit with the shame of that too, and how they feel about the situation and themselves. So what's happening in us? Let's try and work backwards, because it's probably the easiest way to do it. So as I said, often stressful situations might come up, or new situations, and any change or new situations often causes in us a level of stress, or stress on our emotions, and can trigger some underlying things. And as I've said, I've talked about emotions and behaviours that you might see. Now, what's happening in our brains when that happens? The reason we feel the way we do, often, as I said, is fear. And that's because there's a part in our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is our brain's warning system. So what it does, it takes in lots of information. And if it perceives that we're under a life or death threat situation, it fires off and produces chemicals that causes physical reactions in our bodies. And then, of course, we interpret this on an unconscious level as being under threat. So what happens in a stressful scenario is that sometimes our amygdala is perceiving something falsely as a threat to us. And that is because of the thinking and the mindset and the beliefs that we have that are underneath. And ultimately the thinking that we are an imposter. So what kind of things might we be saying to ourselves in our internal story that goes on in our head all the time. So you might be saying things like, oh, I'm not good enough. I haven't got enough qualifications. That person has got way more experience than me. Oh, they look like the right kind of person and I don't. And often that's about how we perceive we look too. And generally, it's about not feeling that we have enough of something. Now, remember, I talked earlier about the culture of scarcity that's created in our society about not having enough. So we sit with that quite a lot. But sometimes there's a real deep-seated belief that that is the case, and that can be about what's happened to us in our lives at some point or other. Okay, so how do we address this? How do we address this sense of being on guard and feeling like an imposter in general? First of all, we do this. We talk about it. We reduce the shame and the sense of shame, and we normalise the fact that this happens when we're under stress, because this is what's been created in our culture, that we have to do this comparison all the time. And sometimes we need to look at our perspective on that too. So we need to have the courage to talk, to make ourselves vulnerable by doing that, and be genuine about how we feel about that and how that's affecting us. The second thing we can do is have a look at that internal story. What is that internal story saying to us? Reframing it by using evidence. And also applying some self-nurture is really, really important. So let me give you an example that might help. Example might be you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in over my head in this new role that I've been given. Okay, and that can be a really scary thing, can't it? And cause us often to withdraw. So that's why it's important to talk about that. So how can you reframe it? How can you apply some nurture? How about saying to ourselves, okay, what skills do I have? I need to remind myself of what I am able to do. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But I do have the ability to learn. And what can I learn? What do I need to learn? Where can I learn it? So that does feel scary. But also asking for support. Where do you have support to get what you need? How can you get that need met? How can you learn that thing? And above all, asking for our needs to be met. All right. Asking for support. If you have a line manager, saying, I recognise that I might need to learn something in this area. How can I do that? Being brave. And that generally begins to shift our perspective of ourself and our abilities and the situation. One other thing that some people find helpful is to imagine this negative belief as a person or a thing. So for instance, when you hear, oh, I'm over my head, I can't cope, I'm not enough, being able to say to yourself, oh, that's my Debbie Downer again, trying to put me off. Oh, do one, will you? That kind of thing. So some people use that and use a little bit of humour to minimise that, providing they address their needs, and that's okay. Self-care. Now, I know we've had a video about that, and that was covered in a lot of detail. But that's really important because we're valuing ourselves and we're saying, we are enough, we are valuable, we are a unique person that needs unique things. And it shifts our focus from external, remember I talked about the comparison, to internal and what we need and how we can look after ourselves and care for ourselves. Now, I talked earlier about those negative self-beliefs that we have that may be quite historical. So they're not being enough, maybe has been backed up by early experiences in life. And asking for help with those from a professional is really important, because then what we can do is we can shift the process. We can deal with the root, which is the belief about yourself and society, and then you work outwards. And so if you dealt with the belief, you address the self-talk, then actually eventually our emotions catch up, and therefore instinctively our behaviour changes. And last but not least, do it scared. Be uncomfortable, sit with that, because often when we're working through addressing that process, then the feelings do catch up eventually. So doing it scared is a great thing to do, because you recognise that you can do something and your self-confidence increases with it. And as we talk about it more, we realise that actually if we're in office of people, there's 1,000,001 other people that feel the same, maybe struggling with the same process. So, as I said, I'm really sorry if I haven't dealt with all of that today. I hope it's given you a really brief insight to the process. If you have any questions or comments or other things that you might like to know a little bit about mental health services, or if you want to come and see me, then drop me a note in the comment. And I would encourage you today to begin that process, to register that self-talk. What are you telling yourself? Because actually, often, the things that we're telling ourselves, we'd never dream of telling anybody else. We're so hard on ourselves often. So encourage yourself. Look at what you can do. Be grateful for those things that you have in your life today. So I hope that's really helped. And it's been nice to meet you. So take care.